Jake Ciely joining me now. He's a senior fantasy writer at The Athletic and host of the All In Football podcast. And let's give him some credit again this week. He's been on point the last 2 weeks, giving us players you had to have in the lineup. This past week, George Kittle, he went off against the Seahawks with 2 touchdowns. So props to you on that one, Jake.
I always like taking my props. And I always like wearing the ugly Christmas sweater this time, Star Wars this year for Christmas coming up.
Love that right there. All right, Jake, we talk about running back injuries often, and another one goes down for the rest of the season, and he was highly drafted in all leagues, as he should have been. Jonathan Taylor of the Indianapolis Colts. Overall, really a disappointing season for him. What happens here now, Jake, in this situation?
They turned to 2 running backs, Zach Moss, formerly of the Bills, and the guy that formed earlier this year when Taylor missed some time is Deion Jackson. The interesting thing here is we saw a lot of Zach Moss, but the Colts were up early and kind of nursing the lead until they blew that game against Kirk Cousins and the Minnesota Vikings. So it really comes down to what do you expect against the Chargers, because the Chargers are vulnerable, and I'm saying in this situation, the Chargers can put up points. I think the Colts are going to be playing a little bit from behind, which would lean towards Deion Jackson. But if you want to play the safer route and not mess with this backfield, not knowing if it's going to be Moss or Deion Jackson. Tyler Algier for the Atlanta Falcons is still out there in a lot of leagues. Gus Edwards for the Baltimore Ravens is getting run every single week. So there still are some options out there.
For the Colts' sake, let's hope they don't get ahead and then lose another epic lead. I mean, that was ridiculous. Let's talk wide receivers now. Who are some late season ads for fantasy managers now in the second week of the playoffs?
I'm going to come back to Atlanta Falcons. The Desmond Ridder debut was not good, but one thing about it was 42% of his targets went to Drake London, the rookie, and 72% of the receiving yards went to Drake London. If somebody dropped Drake London because of the downfall that he had been with Marcus Mariota, you can go pick him back up. There is a definite connection with Desmond Ridder there. Some other have been late, like Jahan Dotson. How many times have I told you over the past couple of weeks, it's going to happen, it's going to happen, it's going to happen. It's finally there. The 49ers do give up some bigger plays. And then if you want to talk about another returning rookie, Romeo Doubs for the Packers immediately got back on that field, and Aaron Rodgers turned to him quite a few times. So him and Christian Watson on that, basically a nice rookie wide receiver duo for the Packers out there.
All right, and for the sake of this show, you just sort of mentioned it, but let's talk about the Commanders traveling to Santa Clara to face the San Francisco 49ers. This is the best defense in the league, Jake. How do you see Commanders' skill players, Terry McLaurin, Brian Robinson, Taylor Heineke, Jahan Dotson? How do you see them in a game like this when you know that defense is so stout?
It really is. What it comes down to is Terry McLaurin has more risk than he normally does. You still have to play McLaurin. It's the other pieces that start to come into this conversation. We know Brian Robinson's been talking about that. He still feels the injury at times. But you probably have to play him at running back. It's coming down to Antonio Gibson and then, as you mentioned, Jahan Dotson. If he can get behind the defense for a big play, the 49ers are a really good defense, but you're looking for that home run because they do give up some bigger plays if things break down. But that's if you need a home run play. We've been enjoying Jahan Dotson the past 2 weeks, or 2 games, I should say. This might be the week where you don't turn to him, and it's basically Brian Robinson, Terry McLaurin, and probably nobody else.
And Jake, quickly now here, I think this is what, the semifinal round for most fantasy leagues. Any just sort of last-minute advice for the, outside of everything you just said, for these final couple of weeks if you're trying to make a run at a championship?
Stick with your studs. Everybody last week, like, there's a conversation to be had if people are underperforming for weeks on end. But when you see people asking, oh, should I bench Saquon Barkley because he's been quiet lately and he's facing Washington? Like, don't go that far. If you have a top 10, top 15 player, you play him no matter what, and you just take it on the chin if they don't perform, because that's fantasy and that's football.